the Survivalist Podcast with Mark Puhale and Matt Gould. In each episode of the Survivalist Podcast, we look at different events and catastrophes that could happen in different areas of the world. Then we give you the knowledge, resources, and recommendations you need to survive. We'll explore scenarios from a worldwide financial collapse to a coordinated terrorist attack to a global climate catastrophe and everything in between. The Survivalist Podcast is brought to you by Survival Cash, Ford Survival Supply, and thebugoutrace.com. Please visit our website, thesurvivalistpodcast.com, for more information or to give us feedback. And now, the Survivalist Podcast with Mark Puhale and Matt Gould.
I'm Matt Gould, and I'm here with Mark Puhale. I'm a TV producer, and Mark is a survival expert. He's co-founder of Survival Cash and Forge Survival Supply. He appeared in the National Geographic Channel series Apocalypse 101 that I produced. Mark spent almost 14 years in the U.S. Marine Corps. He got out as a captain. Mark's book, Everyday Survival Kits, Exactly What You Need for Constant Preparedness, is available everywhere. Today, we're going to look at terrorist scenarios in general and an active shooter scenario in particular. We'll examine the horrible terror attacks in Paris from November 13th, in which at least 129 innocent people were killed. But the lessons we're going to talk about can be used if you ever find yourself in a situation like that one. Remember, it wasn't only Paris this week. There was also a double suicide bomb attack in Beirut that killed 43 people the day before. And then, of course, there was the bombing of the Russian airliner last month that killed 224, and numerous and horrible crazed gunmen scenarios we've had in America over the past few years. So, first off, Mark, tell me about your expertise, weapons, hand-to-hand combat, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so with my experience, not only in the Marine Corps for 14 years, but I did martial arts when I was growing up, and in the Marine Corps, we had the Marine Corps martial arts program, so I've done a lot of hand-to-hand combat training. I have shot pretty much every weapon system in the U.S. military, and I've also coached and trained people on employing those various weapon systems.
And you've thought very deeply about what you'd call an active shooter scenario as well, right?
Yes, very deeply. In fact, on survivalcash.com, I wrote an active shooter article. I'm not sure what the date of this is, but I probably wrote the thing maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And so I have, I don't want to say intimate knowledge, but I have a great deal of knowledge on an active shooter scenario. In fact, my daughter yesterday, who is a junior in one of the high schools in San Antonio, Texas, sends me a text message and said, "Hey, Dad, one of our sister schools in the North Side Independent School District, they're currently on lockdown." And I'm like, "What?" I immediately sent her, "Do you remember what I told you about what to do? You know, get out. If you can't get out, hide, silence your cell phone, remain quiet, barricade the door, or worst case scenario, attack the active shooter." And what happened is 3 schools that were co-located, there were some armed people in the neighborhoods by the school, so they just locked everybody down. And even today, taking my daughter to school, I asked her, just like, "Matt, we probably, I remember practicing tornado drills. I remember practicing and nuclear attack drills, like when I was in elementary school." And I asked her if they did any type of drills or training, or if they've talked through any of these scenarios with their students in her high school. And she's like, "No, Dad, we haven't done anything. Not even that, if someone's in the school, it's not secure. There's a code word over the intercom that everyone, all the teachers lock the doors, they account for everybody, and they get behind their desks or they try to hide." But none of that has been done. And unfortunately, in light of everything that's happening in the world today, especially in America, I don't want to say especially in America, because there's active shooting scenarios that we've seen. They're all over the world, but obviously we're Americans and they get publicized greatly. And why wouldn't a principal or a school district have a drill, just like a fire drill? Why don't they have an active shooter scenario drill? That should be one of the first things they do the first week of school, along with a fire drill, just in case.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it doesn't matter how how strict or how free the gun laws there are in the place you live, right? Because obviously the gun laws in France are very, very strict, and yet these terrorists were able to get AK-47s into Paris.
Right, extremely strict. And without getting into the political discussion regarding, guns and concealed weapons and open carry and our Second Amendment rights as Americans, the places in the United States with the strictest gun laws have the highest murder rates in the country. And France, like you just said, Matt, they're supposed to be a gun-free zone. Look at what just happened. I know we all spend time on Facebook. I mean, most people do. Most of our listeners would. Most Americans do. We've seen all kinds of things about, if the terrorists come here and they want to do something, we're not going to stand by aimlessly. And being a concealed weapons holder in the state of Texas, as of January 1st, it's going to be open carry. So just like when we filmed in Colorado, I could legally walk around with a .45 sidearm on my body. Now, if I were an aggressor or if I were a terrorist or an active shooter, or why would I want to attack a hard target like me or people like me that visibly had firearms on their body?
I hear you. At the same time, I wonder if that just increases the amount of active shooter scenarios we'll see if everybody has them all the time, or if it would decrease it. I know that you think it would decrease it, right?
Yeah, decrease it. I mean, one of my friends runs the VA program at Texas State University here in San Marcos, Texas, and they're discussing allowing their students to open carry on the campus. And, I don't know about you, but there were times when I took some tests where I was pretty pissed off. Not that I would ever pull a gun on a professor, but that I don't know if we necessarily need them in our colleges, but maybe keeping them concealed or allowing the teachers, for example, to be armed with these active shooting scenarios that are taking place, and with the threat of a terrorist attack. Just we're fortunate we haven't been hit since 9/11, but that doesn't mean that they're not planning, scheming, trying, strategizing to hit us hard. I mean, they already said. The ISIS already said they want to strike in D.C. just like they struck in Paris.
So let's go to Paris, and let's say that we're at the Bataclan concert venue, now infamous, in the 11th district there, where one of the main attack sites. So here's an eyewitness that was there, that the BBC quotes him, says, so he's inside, he's listening to the band Eagles of Death Metal. And he says, we heard a loud bang, but I think we just thought it was part of the set. I didn't react at first, and then I heard people screaming behind me, and I turned around. And I think there were two people. They entered from the back of the arena, and they just started to open fire with what looked like AK-47s. So, Mark, first of all, were they AK-47s?
Okay, so I've heard mixed things, Matt. I've heard assault weapons, and I've also heard pump-action shotguns. Those are the things that I've read and heard on the news and online. I cannot confirm or deny whether or not it was an AK. I know it was an assault weapon, and some of the other witnesses said that they were shooting what seemed to be like pump-action shotguns in there also.
So if you have an AK-47, so you're in a theater and there's 1,500 people in there, and it's very crowded. Everybody's having a good time, and suddenly people come in the back and start shooting. So I guess my first question is there anything you could have done? Like, let's say you're going to go to the theater, you're going to go see the concert. Is there anything you would do with all the knowledge and expertise that you have before you even walk into the place? Before you go into the place, anything you would do?
So what I've done, like going to watch a movie, for example, after the Colorado shooting in the Aurora Theater for Batman, I get into a movie theater. I know where the exits are. They're typically an exit left and right, and the same door you came into in a theater. So I know where the exits are, and I think about what if some crazy fucker got up and started shooting in here? What would I do? How would I protect the person I'm with? If I'm in the movies with my daughter, throw her under the seats. I'm thinking about contingencies of ways to protect myself and then get out of there. And so I would have done the same thing going to this concert venue. Now, in a movie theater in Texas, you can carry a firearm. You're not going to get a metal detector. You're not going to get metal detector going into a movie. Now, Paris, or going into a concert or going to a big sporting event, you're going to get your, if you have your wife with you, Matt, she's going to get her purse checked. So I'm not going to be able to bring a weapon into that venue. But same thing, I think I would go through my mind, where could threats potentially come from? If someone were to come in and try to kill me, kill us, do a suicide bomb, where could they get in? So I would try to position myself where I could get out quickly. The first thing, with active shooters, you try to get the hell out of there, which some of those people, the concert venue did. They got out.
Yeah, so this particular eyewitness, so just to carry it on, his quote, he said, obviously, I just grabbed my girlfriend and pulled her with me and tried to make my way towards the exit. There was a small fire exit to the right of the stage, but a lot of us all went for it at the same time, and there was a bit of a crush, so we all couldn't get out. He continues, it was an automatic rifle firing into the crowd, people falling all over the place, people screaming and just clawing and running and pushing to get away. So the first thing is, when you first go into the place, before there's been a threat at all, you want to position yourself so that you can get out if you need to, right?
Exactly. Just like when I get on an airplane, even though, if the airplane goes down, we're probably all screwed, but I see where the exits are. If I'm not sitting in an exit row, where's the nearest exit to me if I need to evacuate the aircraft? Just like if I'm in this concert, if I'm in a movie, if I'm in some confined space, how the heck am I going to get out of there and get out of there quickly?
So let's say you find yourself in this scenario where you're trying to get to the exit, you have your girlfriend with you, and they're firing indiscriminately into the crowd, and the exit's just too crushed, and people can't get out. And it's sort of making you a sitting duck, isn't it, when you're right there by the exit?
It is, because you're like a herd of cattle, or a bunch of I don't know, and you're a bunch of people. I use the LaGuardia example, which you can probably relate to, flying out of LaGuardia. It's like a New York or New Jersey turnpike going for the toll road. Everybody masses to try to get to the exit or try to board an aircraft. There's no order to it. It's just complete free for all. And so, with that being said, if the exit were clogged and everyone was just Black Friday trying to get into Walmart style, I would try to, first of all, get low. So, they're probably shooting. They could have been spraying and praying, or they would have the weapon in their shoulder, which means, at their height, they could be spraying what we call in the military, like they'd be trying to do a sort of kind of a grazing fire. They just try to be spraying back and forth, right, at shoulder level. So I would try to get below that. I try to use anything possible to shield myself. I looked at the pictures at the concert hall. There really wasn't a lot of on the actual concert floor. There was nothing to cover you other than your fellow concert goers. If you got below them, they could potentially stop a bullet for you.
Yeah, and just to finish, this particular guy, whose name was Michael O'Connor from the UK, he said the terrorists emptied their magazines, and then when they did, they took a minute to reload, and everybody started running for the exit again, but then they just reloaded and started picking them off again. But he said what he did is he pulled his girlfriend underneath him, and he laid on top of her on the floor, sort of with dead people all around them. So I imagine that's what saved him, right?
Probably, yeah, he got low. He got low, then I'm assuming he exited after that, right?
I don't think he exited until the police came in and stormed the place.
Because, see, the things that I read, that they were in, I read a couple things. One, that, people got out. They corralled a bunch of people right in front of the stage, and they shot a lot of people there. And they also were walking around indiscriminately with people just who were laying on the floor. They were just going around shooting them execution style. So even though he did that, that might not have been the best situation, because if there was a lull in fire, that would be the optimum time to freaking attack those people. Right. But two of those three had suicide belts on. according to the news, that when the police stormed, 2 of them detonated their suicide belts. But for the average person, the average person fearing for their life, you're probably going to try to get out. But if you can't get out, then that might be, and you're in clear line of sight of this attacker, that might be the time to try to throw something to attack them, to disrupt their reloading, to try to take the weapon away from them, to try to disable them somehow.
Yeah, so let's talk more about that. So let's say that you see that you don't have a weapon. They're firing indiscriminately. What are the things you look for? So it did say that they were wearing suicide belts. What does that look like? How would you know they were wearing suicide belts? And how does that change the way you behave?
From just looking at them, if they're wearing some type of vest, you can't necessarily tell if it's a suicide vest or not, depending on what they have on it. They said that all of the bombers had on either vests or belts, and they had batteries, buttons, and bolts, like to use as projectiles from the vest. So when they detonated it. So I don't know if those were visible on the vest or they were concealed like underneath the vest or underneath the belt. It would probably be pretty hard to discern what the suicide vest looked like. I mean, we've seen them. We've all seen them on the news or I'm thinking of Homeland, for example, their suicide vests, the Homeland show. So if you could recognize that, then I would say, okay, these guys, they want most active shooters. Think about the active shooter scenarios. Most of these people, they want to martyr themselves. First of all, even here in this country, they want to take as many lives as possible, and then they want to kill themselves. They have a death wish, right? So they want to go out regardless. But my guess, I'm only speculating, Matt, because I'm not in the mind of a terrorist. But if I were a terrorist and I were shooting and I ran out of ammo and I had a suicide vest on, and the people who I was trying to kill, if they attacked me, I'd probably detonate that vest.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like if a bunch of guys are like, okay, let's get this fucker. Let's get him. Let's take him out. And if a few of us attacked him, my guess is the likelihood of he or she detonating the vest would probably be higher. And then you think, well, okay, then I need to grab their hands so they can't detonate the vest. There's all kinds of what ifs you could do if they do in fact have a vest on. If they don't, and the person's just reloading, then that's the perfect time to attack them.
And how long does it take usually to reload?
It can be extremely fast if it's practiced and rehearsed. It can be very quick. I mean, they are going to have to drop the magazine. They're going to have to put another magazine in, and they're going to have to chamber around, which it could take less time than what I just said. How I just talked through it, it could be done faster than that. So it could be very quick. But they also have to get on target again, too. So if you hit them, if you flank them, if you hit them from the sides, if you came at them from behind, that's where you could try to distract them, try to throw something at them when they're reloading and attack them.
Yeah, so that's another thing to think about then. So, I mean, it's almost like you're looking at a lose-lose scenario if they have a suicide vest, because even if you can attack them, they could blow themselves up, and then they would be blowing you up with them.
Right.
But at that moment, I guess you have to think about heroism too, I guess, and sacrificing yourself so that they can't kill more people, right?
Mm-hmm. Right, and that's like if that goes, helping your fellow man. I mean, we've heard stories about many people in the military they've sacrificed their lives for the lives of their brothers and sisters, where they would jump on a grenade to save someone's life. So it's like, that's someone's own psyche of what they're going to do. For me, I think I would be like, okay, these freaking terrorist assholes just came in there, and not only do they have assault weapons, but they're wearing suicide vests. I'm probably just going to try to get the hell out of there first I'm going to try to get out, and then I'm going to try to find cover. And then if possible, I would try, if I was armed, absolutely, I would get behind cover, or I would try to shoot him in the head and kill him. You know, I mean, that's being armed and in some place like that, which, like I said, going into a concert in the United States or a large sporting event, you're not going to be armed because you're going to be patted down. But if I was in a movie theater or some other venue where I might have a firearm with me, I'm absolutely going to try to take him out. But if I don't, I'm probably going to try to get out. If I can't get out immediately, then I'm going to get behind cover. So cover is going to stop a bullet. I'm going to try to hide myself and the people that are with me, and others too. Hide, turn your phones off, stay quiet, don't draw attention to yourself, and try not to get shot.
And then, so if all those things don't work, and it's a matter of you have to attack the person, then there's a few things you were telling me that you could do. So number one, you look for them to reload, and you rush them at that point, right?
Right.
With the goal of tackling them or
tackling them, hitting them in the throat, punch them in. If they can't see, they can't fight. If they can't breathe, they can't fight. If they're in pain, they're less likely to fight. So hit them in the hit them in the groin area, hit them in the throat, hit them in the eyes, hit them in the ears, disrupt their equilibrium, try to put them off balance, and then try to take them out, and then get the weapon away from them. And if there's multiple assailants, get the weapon away and then use that weapon on the other assailants. Do whatever it takes to put up a fight. Don't just go out like, hogs going to get slaughtered.
Right.
Put up a fight. And then this might be a little bit premature, but if you do take them out, you have to make sure you present yourself as you're not a threat. Like when you leave the building, I didn't mention this before, but if you get out at the start of the scenario, you need to make sure you get out of there and you're not a threat to law enforcement if they're on the scene already. You come out with your hands up. You don't try to be threatening because they could shoot you coming out the door.
Yeah, or if you took the weapon away from the terrorist, you're saying, and then you go outside with the weapon.
With the weapon, exactly. You could be a perceived threat, and you could get shot, even though you were trying to be a hero. So you want to make sure you communicate that you are an innocent bystander and by no means a threat or a terrorist or any threat to anybody around you or law enforcement.
And talk to me a bit about marksmanship. And marksmanship in general. If someone has a handgun, say, if someone goes in and your active shooter is shooting with a handgun, what are the odds that he's going to shoot what he's aiming at?
Well, it depends on how good of a marksman he is and what's his background, what's his training. Has he rehearsed this in his mind? It's one thing to shoot at paper targets. It's another thing to shoot at a human being and take their life. It also depends on what range they're at. And Matt, I know you're learning to shoot a pistol. You've been shooting a pistol. When I first started shooting a pistol, I thought I was just going to be able to pick up the pistol and I would be hitting bullseyes every time I shot. And that's not the case. Pistol shooting, it takes practice. It takes practice with sight alignment, sight picture, trigger control. If you jerk the trigger on a pistol, you could be, I think I told you the example. There was an example of I think it was a Georgia state trooper and an assailant in an elevator. They each had semi-automatic pistols. They each unloaded the magazines they were trying to kill each other, and both of them missed each other in an elevator.
And they both unloaded the whole magazine, right? They
both unloaded their magazines. And so you can miss. It's not like the movies where everything you shoot at, you're going to hit. But think about these active shooters, these terrorists, they're training for this. This is if you're Muslim and you believe in Islam, if you're taking out the infidel, you're going to heaven. So they're probably training, vehemently to make sure they hit their targets, or they have enough ammo they're shooting arbitrarily. They're going to try to kill as many people as possible. So they may or may not be accurate shooters. And given a pistol, remember a pistol has a limited amount of ammunition. It's just like a rifle, but a rifle is going to obviously have a lot more capacity. So you could just end with the depending on what venue you're in or what situation you're in, depending on how concentrated your targets are, i.e., you're in that concert venue, that thing was full of people. So like I said, you put the weapon in your shoulder and you start pulling the trigger, you're probably going to hit some people. Whereas if you went into a maybe not so crowded restaurant, but the terrorists want to get as many people as possible. So they're going to try to find a highly concentrated area, just like when they attacked the restaurants, they got people on the patio who are out there, having drinks, and they attacked the stock. They had 3 bombs go off at the soccer stadium,
right,
where high concentration of people in the stadium and then outside the stadium as well. Leaving think about it, leaving Madison Square Garden or leaving a sporting event, how crowded that is for everyone to try to get to their vehicles or try to get to the subway. I mean, those are targets where if they have a vest on or if they had a weapon, they could spray with a weapon and they're probably going to hit some people.
Well, let's say it's not a pistol then. They're spraying with an automatic weapon like an AK-47. Now, do you think they'd likely be on full auto or on 3-round burst or shooting single shots?
I think they would be on full auto, would be my guess.
So,
but full auto, they're also going to go through their ammunition very quickly. So that means they're going to have a lot of ammunition on them. They're going to have to reload quickly. Most AKs have like a 30-round magazine, just like an M16. So you could go through that on full auto quickly.
How fast would you go through that?
Oh, you could go through it in probably 5 seconds or less.
Okay, so they're going to go through a whole magazine in 5 seconds, and then that's your moment to go rush them, right? And I guess the whole point I was making was that people are just not as good of shots as you'd think they are, and people miss more often than the average person thinks.
Right. Than the average person thinks, and like I said, these terrorist guys, I mean, they've been training. You don't know how long their training has been going on, but they could miss. I mean, they could miss if you stay low, if they're trying to take out as many people as possible. And most of the people are probably going to be standing up and running for the exit. So if you stay below that, you get below their fire, you could potentially rush them. Or if you got behind them or you got on the side of them.
Right. So that could be a good option. And
yes, it could definitely be an option. It sounds like from your eyewitness, Matt, it sounds like I thought about this too. Like when we would do either live fire exercises or if we're engaging the enemy, the last thing we want to do is have what's called a lull in fire. So if let's just say there's 4 of us and we're engaging the enemy. The last thing I want to have happen is we're all reloading at the same time. We want to keep constant fire on the enemy to either kill them or keep their head down. So we would reload separately.
So that's what they taught you in the Marine Corps. Do you think? But
absolutely.
But I think it's probably safe to say that terrorists are not as disciplined as Marines.
I would say they're not as disciplined. I'd say they're in the heat of the moment. They're in there to try to kill as many people as possible. They're probably spraying and praying, and so it sounds like they all kind of reloaded at the same time. So even though they were in there, they may or may not have been support. Yes, they're supporting each other, but what was their communication between each other?
Right.
Do they immediately go in and spread out? Just like, if they went into a theater, if they went into something, if there were a couple people, I think the Columbine shooters, they separated. I think they were close to each other, but they didn't, it's not they were walking side by side doing their business.
Right.
They were, because there was another shooter on site beside, and so that's the other thing. If you take out one, are there others? You have to see and check if there are others, depending on the environment you're in.
I also want to ask you about improvised weapons. General talk about improvised weapons and what might be available to you that could become a weapon if you're in a scenario like this?
Well, I think about, I look at the concert venue. I believe there were tables. I'm sure there were cocktails being served, right? Beer, wine, drinks, which are going to be it's going to be in glass that you could throw these things at your assailants, right? You could make your own projectiles. Granted, it's not a bullet, but that could be potentially an improvised weapon. It doesn't look like there's chairs around the perimeter of the dance floor. It seems like there's fire extinguisher and stuff on the wall. That could be used maybe as a distraction. Blasting fire extinguisher smoke to try to cover yourself to get out. You could use, if you're in a bar or a restaurant, you could use your plates, your salt, pepper shakers, silverware, chairs. You could use all that stuff to throw at them. Or you could have, a knife or a fork to stab them if you got within close range of them.
Yeah, definitely. And what about things that you always have on you? I mean, I've heard that a bottle of water could be a good
bottle of water. I mean, you could throw water in their face. You could throw drinks at them. You could throw your cell phone at them. I'm thinking from a male perspective, a woman could have, there's a lot of stuff they have in their purse that they could potentially throw or use their purse as a weapon. In a school, there's chairs, there's pens, there's chalk, there's books, backpacks. I mean, anything you could use to throw. There's probably, if you can get into the janitor's, there's brooms and mop handles that you could use as maybe spears, or anything you could throw to distract them. You could use.
It's almost like there's a mindset that you have to think about, right? That sort of people with military training maybe do think about and other people don't, which is, what could I use for a weapon? What could I use to do harm to this person that's trying to harm me?
Right. Either do harm or distract them, like we said, so you can get away. So you can get the heck out of there and get out of this threatening situation. So either distracting them and getting out, or getting behind cover and getting out, or ultimately, if you have to, attacking them to take them out.
Right.
And it's things that, like I said today, talking to my daughter again, it's like, why haven't you rehearsed this just in case? Not saying it's going to happen, but what if it did happen and you could have done a drill that could potentially save lives? To do a quick 20-minute drill at school that could potentially save the lives of students and teachers if some crazy bastard came in and tried to, shoot up a school. That's the school where my daughter's at.
And is this a scenario where you, let's say you were going to a concert with a group of your friends or family, is that something you would talk about? Like, here's the plan of what we would do? I would
definitely be thinking it. And in light of everything going on today, I would absolutely talk about it. And something that maybe they could, from a female perspective, I mean, they could have mace in their purse too. So that could be a very viable option. You spray mace in the attacker's face, they're going to be down for the count for a while.
Yeah, for sure.
And if or a taser, but a taser, remember, you're just going to have to get closer. But I would definitely talk about that and be like, if something happens, we're getting out. Exit number 1 is the right door. Exit number 2 is the left door. Exit, 3 is the way we came in, and we're going to go to the right, and we're going to skirt around cover or curtains, or we're going to jump off the top area and get the hell out of there. Even though maybe it's a 10-foot drop, but a 10-foot drop is better than a bullet to the face.
Yeah, I think that sums it up pretty well. A 10-foot drop. This is pretty much everything is almost everything is better than a bullet to the face.
Yep.
Well, I think this is really enlightening, and a lot of the stuff you're talking about, I think, is common sense, but a lot of it is something that people just wouldn't think of doing it. And I guess this is the very last question: is how would you keep yourself from freezing up in that scenario, or do most people not freeze up? What's the sort of psychology of it?
Well, I think the psychology of it is self-preservation, right? So self-preservation and then shock and fear. I saw an interview, one of the bystanders at the restaurant. he came by, and I mean, people were mortally wounded, and he just said, I was trying to help my fellow man, and these people were dying, and I just wanted to be there with them and comfort them. We would, just like we've seen with things that have happened in New York, which you can attest to, with the power outage, with 9/11. You would think, like when I lived up there, my initial impression, all New Yorkers are crass. Why are you talking to me? What are you trying to get on me? But with these hardships, when these, big events happen, people came together. But these scenarios, I mean, they're instantaneous. And how are you going to react? How have you thought about these things? Have you rehearsed these things in your mind? Tactically, when you go into a restaurant, when do you sit with your back to the door? Do you always sit observing the door just in case if a threat comes in there? Do you survey people wherever you are and be like, okay, what's on this person's agenda? Could they have a gun? What's going on in their head? I mean, call me crazy, but I mean, that's stuff that I do. And it's stuff that I do. Granted, I was a Marine for almost 14 years, but it's just, I would like to think, even if I wasn't in the military, just in light of me being a survival expert, me wanting to be prepared all the time and think about contingencies, I would be thinking and doing those things. And I think, like we've said before, the point of this, we're trying to raise awareness, right? We want to raise awareness and potentially save lives and help people get through a bad situation. I mean, that's ultimately what we're trying to do. And we're trying to get everybody to engage their brain, and so you don't go in shock with like, okay, holy shit, I've read about this, I've seen it, I've talked about it, and okay, I'm out with my family or my friends and some fucker is shooting at us. What am I going to do? I'm not going to freeze up. I'm going to get out, I'm going to hide, or I'm going to take them out. And that's just, you have to think about these things, and it's crazy. I mean, with me having a concealed weapons permit in the state of Texas, and today, for example, I'm running around in shorts, sandals, and an Under Armour collared shirt, and I should have my pistol on me. And it's in 45 years, granted, there's been times I've needed my pistol, but from an active shooter scenario, I haven't needed my pistol. And the time when I need it, I better make sure that I have it with me.
Yeah.
To be ready to protect myself or protect my daughter or protect my mom and dad, my sister, brother-in-law, my friends that I'm with. And I think that's what we've talked about this before also, with the fact that we are potentially letting a lot of refugees in to the United States. We don't necessarily know the background of all these individuals. We don't. We could be opening the door to our enemy. And with ISIS wants to kill us, they want to destroy our way of life, period. And highly unlikely they're going to walk to my house and try to kill me. But for example, the San Antonio Riverwalk, huge tourist area, they're going to light the Riverwalk on the Friday after Thanksgiving. So all the trees on the Riverwalk, all the Christmas lights are going to go up. What a great potential terrorist target, or a theater, or a sporting event. I mean, you have to think, like, you have to get your mind into like a counterterrorism focus.
Yeah.
You have to think like they would think, how am I going to get the most, no pun intended, but the most bang for my buck with, if I'm a suicide bomber, where am I going to take out the most people?
Yeah, well, I think about that because my office is right by Times Square, so
right.
That's a place they would aim at. I should say that, of course, of the refugees, 99.99% of them are fleeing the same violence that these terrorists are perpetrating, and they're good people. It's just that what you're saying is that terrorists could hide amongst them, and I think a lot of people have been talking about that lately, right?
Right, and that's some of the things I've seen on the news, some of the things I've seen all over social media is I don't see a bunch of women and children. I see a bunch of men, potential combatants, combatants of the United States. I've also seen that some of these refugees, they want their way of life in our country. And yes, we believe in religious freedom and people being, free from religious persecution. But like you said, a majority of these people, they're fleeing their country because of the regime over there. But what percentage? Here's the M&M analogy. If someone gave you a bowl of M&Ms and 10 of the M&Ms were deadly poison, would you still stick your hand in there and eat some? So we don't know if there's potential terrorists integrated with the refugees. And I would say it's safe to say that there are. But how many? What's their plan? ISIS said they have 71 warriors in 15 states in our country already. And they're ready to execute similar terrorist type missions against the American people.
Yeah. So that's something to think about. So today's episode, it's a very practical set of advice from an expert who's thought deeply about it. And thanks, Mark.
Just to let you know, Matt, the active shooter scenario, when I wrote my article, the guidance, I put it together from the same rules are governed by law enforcement, the FBI. They say the same things. Get out, hide, and be silent, barricade yourself, and then take out if need be. But then when you get out or when law enforcement comes in, make sure you are not a perceived threat. You don't want to get shot. So make sure your hands are up, you're identifying yourself, be prepared to get interviewed, be patient. Don't, try to, if you keep a cool head, help out the people around you if you can, because people are going to be, they're going to be scared to death. Literally, people could go in shock. So, and if you're not one of those people, then you need to rise up and you need to help lead your fellow people and out of there and keep them safe.
Great stuff, Mark. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Survivalist Podcast with Mark Puhaly and Matt Gould. Brought to you by Survival Cash, Ford Survival Supply, and thebugoutrace.com. Please visit our website, thesurvivalistpodcast.com. This show is produced by Chad Dugatz at the Hangar Studios in New York City.